Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, may I have your attention, please? Are you ready to engage in a mind-blowing experience and hear talks about life, technology, entertainment, and business? The next episode of HIPTHER Talks starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, good day, good evening, everybody. Welcome to a fresh edition of HIPTHER Talks, the podcast that promises to cover whatever you're interested in. We have today Zonke from in VR Space. Hello, Zonke. I'm going to kindly ask you to give us a few sentences about yourself, your background, and about your company.
Okie dokie, where to start? So my name is Zonke Kirchhoff, as you already mentioned. I'm CEO of VR Space, a Berlin-based virtual reality and a little bit of AR, like let's say XR company. We are doing all kind of genres and formats in that field, or most of them, from live broadcast and 360, from events like festivals and concerts to documentaries or narrative pieces, to interactive games and art installations that probably do not really fit into a specific genre or format. So we are playing around with this medium, as well as doing a lot of tech research and development, light field technologies, volumetric capture, this kind of stuff. But as well, we are having a rental, so we rent out equipment to everybody who does not have a VR headset, or festivals that need a bunch of them. Technology tools that might be useful for these kind of installations, but as well computers and cameras and everything you might need to create or distribute virtual reality. Exactly. I started with that about 10 years ago, running in VR now since 7 years. And before I had, and I still have, another company that is focusing on VFX and stereoscopic 3D filmmaking, more in a classical environment like cinema and TV. And so I studied film production. At the end of my studies and at the beginning of my studies, I started with political science. So that's my background.
Whoa, that sounds like a lot. You mentioned VR, AR, XR. Could you shed some light on these terms? What's the difference between them? What each and every one of them stand for?
Sure. Of course, I always forget that these are sometimes new terms for people who are not in this field as much as I am, or we are. So basically, perhaps the easiest way to describe is VR is happening in goggles and headsets that are totally close to the environment. So you see a virtual environment, a virtual world around you, which might be more or less interactive. So of course you can watch 360 videos in a virtual reality headset. If that's virtual reality or not is up to other people to define. But then there are interactive games, interactive applications where you can train, learn how to repair things and so on in a completely virtual environment. Then augmented reality, AR, is something where you can put a layer on the real world, like you look through a camera onto something real in front of you, and there will be virtual layers augmented on top of that. So everybody knows things like, I would say, like Pokemon Go, for example. That's something we consider as AR, even if there again, some people might define it differently. That's a complicated part of all these new technologies. There are different definitions to that by different people, and what degree of augmenting things is already augmented reality is partially discussed as well. But something you see on your smartphone, for example, some people would consider Snapchat as AR, or a very easy form of AR as well, because you put a layer, a filter on top of what you can see through the camera. Other people would see something that is based on like Microsoft HoloLens, for example, to name one of the glasses that are there as an AR device. So to make it more easy, we tend to say XR now, which is the term for covering everything that might be virtual reality, augmented reality, or mixed reality. Mixed reality is something that mixes both things, where you have a VR headset, for example, with cameras that look through, so you look with a VR headset on a real world around you, layering something artificial on top of that. Is it more complicated now, or?
I don't know what to say about that, but yeah. So basically, what you're saying is that XR is both of them. I mean, does it have to be AR and VR combined to name it XR, or not?
No, we try, we or other people who are using the XR term are trying to make it short for them own. Like, if you always have to explain that your studio is doing VR and AR and MR, you can make it shorter and say we are doing XR. So everything, every letter that you can put in front of the R for reality is something we are dealing with, which is an X at that moment. So replace it by A, V, M, or whatever comes in the near future.
Okay. Now it's more clear. You mentioned games in one of the industry that is you are currently working in, mm-hmm. And by conclusion, it's one of the industries that use lots of AR, VR, or at least they're starting to. Mm-hmm. But except gaming, what are the other common uses for XR nowadays?
Well, I would say, of course, as already said, like, there is a lot of, and that's something that most of the people, the mass audience will not even recognize right now, is in education, teaching, training, and so on. So, for example, like educating doctors to practice like operations on the open heart, for example, is things that are happening in VR. But as well, like maintaining machines, maintaining, oil platforms that are located offshore, where you cannot just send people to train them how to replace a vent or a pipe or something like this. You could much easier do in their warm and cozy living room or in the office space, and educate them until they are there, until they are trained as much as possible, and then they can go there and do the job without needing any assistance on location. So these are two fields where it happens a lot. As well, design process, for example, in the automotive industry, which is very cost intensive. You can always just build a car and then recognize, oh, the design is not looking too good, so let's waste it again, start a new one. This is happening in VR as well, very much. Just to name a few fields, and of course, that are fields where a lot of money is inside, like medical industries. It's about the human life, everything that is like the energy industry. Of course, there's a lot of money inside as well as in the automotive industry. These are the main. And then if you're looking more into the entertainment or into the industry that is reshaping continuously right now, I would say VR is used a lot in these kind of things that we are doing right now. Like, we're using a 2D platform where we are talking to each other with a video. In VR, you will find more and more platforms that, which one of them is developed by us, where you can meet together with avatars, you can socialize, you can go to like kind of conference where you can listen to keynotes of other people, live stream into the platform, but you can even experience virtual reality content inside the virtual reality platforms. So this is kind of a completely new world that opened up, as well, fueled by the pandemic, because people looked more into platforms and then they recognized, oh, we can meet in VR. So a little bit more of a social impact given than in the 2D video call, and experience what we normally would have experienced on location with all the VR experiences and films and whatever is there in the festival conference.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I wanted to clear the light on something that I just realized while you were explaining. For example, a doctor learning how to operate, and this process taken in VR is associated to the usage of VR in education. What does it take to be associated with VR in healthcare, for example, or let's say automotive maybe. If someone is learning how to repair some parts or how to do something, it's mainly associated with education. But what does it take to actually use XR in a specific domain, except training, taking that aside?
I'm not 100% sure if I understood the question now.
So when we say the usage of XR in medicine, if we are imagining, most people understand that the XR is used to learn something that is medicine related, but that alone is the usage of XR in education. And I was wondering, what would it take? What needs to be done to actually say that XR is used in medicine or automotive or?
Right. So for medicine, I would say if it's really used for treatment of patients, that's what you're referring to. Or like in
for example,
automotive industry, to really use like a VR headset while driving a car, for example. Okay, that's happening as well. It's very, very first steps. Like, for example, there is a startup that was created out of Audi, for example, that invented a system where the VR system is connected to the computers in the car that tells the VR headset if someone is steering to the left or to the right, or if it's accelerating or braking. And these kind of movements are directly translated to the VR headset or the experience that we're experiencing in there. So they created, for example, like a ride through a graveyard, and to avoid motion sickness, for example, all the movements from the car where you're sitting in the wheel are translated into the movement of the vehicle you're sitting in the experience. So it all correlates and fits together. So with that, the idea, I think the basic idea was to give an entertainment product to people who are commuting, for example, in cities like LA, where you have a traffic jam all the time. And if you're not a tourist in LA, it doesn't add anything to you anymore to look out of the window to the other cars in the traffic jam. So you would like to do something else. And that was basically the idea. So that would be one answer on your question, I hope. Same applies for medical purpose. For example, we did projects with companies that are giving long-term injections for patients. I don't know how it's called in English, the exact treatment, but it doesn't matter. It's about long-term injections. Some people don't like to see the needles and don't like to see how the needles are stick into their arm. And then, of course, sitting for 45 minutes there and waiting until all the fluids are injected. It's super boring. And then there are sounds of the machines and stuff that might be annoying. So there we curated a program and set up a special player for that, where people could just relax. They don't even see the needle, they don't feel the needle, and the 45 minutes are over before they could even think about it, and would have appreciated another 15 minutes in the virtual reality. This could be one way. I mean, medical is a very broad field in the end. We have other projects where we are working with elderly homes, for example, or with people who cannot go to museums anymore. So we generate interactive, but as well non-interactive content for VR headsets that we can bring to these places where people who will not be able to buy a ticket for the museum anyway at all anymore, still can have a virtual museum visit. Perhaps it's considered more like elderly care, but it is even used in children's hospitals. So it's not only about elderly people. And so I would consider it as a medical use as well. It's like giving a treatment to people who are locked in elderly homes and hospitals because they are sick. And so this is part of the treatment as well, to give them a little bit of pleasure in life. So it's very broad.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, what we talked about these so to say major industries that are having the material ways to get in the XR industry and get the most, as they possibly can, the most usage of this technology. But Do you have any idea about what industries are waiting in line to use this? I mean, of course, there's healthcare, there's automotive, there's education, there's military, there's science, and all kind of huge industries. But are there any industries that you feel that they could really benefit and they would like to use this, but it's not yet there? They're not.
For sure, telecommunications. I mean, the time of the iPhone and these kind of devices is more or less, it's over. People are already considering that Apple already started to stop the iPhone as a product because they are working on their own VR headset. And as I'm saying, AR, VR headset, XR headset, whatever, nobody really knows what they're exactly working on. There's a lot of rumors, there are first prototypes envisioned, but if that's really the device as it will look like, nobody knows until they release it. And as always, with Apple at least, I mean, they have announced the car and the TV screen, and both of them never made it to the market. So until they not really release it, nobody knows if it will be ever released. But here I'm pretty much positive. I'm pretty convinced that they will do it because, and there we are perhaps back at the XR term, the VR headsets and the AR headset as we know them right now is definitely an intermediate. And as we've seen, Facebook collaborated with Ray-Ban 5 months ago, something like mid of this year, and released, as Bose did before, a properly designed, of course, Ray-Ban is involved in that, Ray-Ban shaped glass, and that case only with audio features. But the next step there will be visual features included as well. So you have a glass that looks like mine, that is like, will not identify it as a VR or AR headset, but has these kind of functionalities. And that's something that will happen during the next years because these things are always getting smaller and smaller. And at a certain point, technically it's already doable, but not in these small devices, not for a cost that the main audience would buy it. But you could shut down the glasses and have a VR device, or you can open it up again. Like, as you know, from sunglasses, like automatic sunglasses that darken down if you're looking more into the sun, or if you're driving into a tunnel, it's opening up like totally crystal clear glasses. So this will come, definitely. It doesn't, I don't know if it takes a year or 3 or 5 years, but it'll come. And if you're talking about like this kind of, the one thing is telepresence. So if we are talking to each other, you want that people are looking into your eyes and not looking somewhere else. But there is a webcam in my computer, so I have to look up there. But the monitor standing in front of me. Even here, if I want to look into your eyes, I have to look into the camera, which prevents that I'm looking on my screen, so I'm not seeing you at the same time. Yeah. These kind of issues. And I know that telecommunication companies like Huawei or research facilities like Fraunhofer are working on these kind of aspects since decades already. And then we are talking about holograms, for example. I mean, we've seen them in Star Wars. R2-D2 presented a hologram of Princess Leia on Tatooine in the first part. And so we are looking for these kind of holograms. Even better if they are not only like presented there and talking to you, but if you can interact with them, if you can have a phone call like ours with a hologram that is life-size in my room, looking like you're sitting right over there. This will come, and this will exactly be done first step at least with these kind of devices, I think. Yeah,
I see.
And perhaps just to add one sentence, that's what we are seeing, like with the big telco companies like Telekom here in Germany. They are interested in getting licenses for 5G, 6G, whatever comes then next, because they know that they need this kind of bandwidth on the one hand to transfer this amount of data, but as well the processing. 5G is not only bandwidth, it's much more. And so the processing power between that to process all this is something that comes next and that is needed to provide all these functionalities in the next step. So that's why I think telco companies are pretty interested, and that's why I think that some telco companies pushed for VR because they already think in what comes in the next step. German Telekom was not interested in producing and selling VR headsets. Otherwise, they would do that, and they don't.
I get this. I'm switching a little bit to the financial side. It's not the pleasant subject to talk about, but would there be any chances in the close future to diminish the costs of VR technology in order to make it accessible to smaller companies that maybe right now would definitely use or benefit the XR technology, but they don't afford it yet? Are any steps taken into this direction?
Sure, definitely. I mean, it's happening already. If you're looking at the market and how it developed in the last 5 years, I mean, so we had this camera from Finland. I'm not sure if I should name so many brands here, but we had this beautifully designed camera from Nokia, I name it, Nokia also. And it was like when I introduced it to the market, I think it was about 40,000 euros or 50,000 euros or something like this. Super expensive, but a professional camera. And that was in the very early days of 360 video making of this generation, like I would, let's say 5 years ago. And then suddenly Chinese companies came around like Insta, Kandao, and so on, and they produced cameras that could do a similar image quality, of course, not as good as one from Nokia, but the cameras cost like 5,000 euros, so 10% of that. And if you take a look on what a proper DSLR camera costs without any lenses, you're already in that area of 3,000, 3,500 areas. So it's a proper 360 camera that you can use even in professional field, and people are using it for professional commercial shoots, is available at the next Media Markt right around the corner, or you can order it and it will be delivered in 1 week to your home for 3,500 to 5,000 euros. You can invest 15,000 euros, but if you are looking into what a professional film camera like an ARRI or a RED camera costs, you are already far more to the consumer end than in the professional end with these costs. Same with the headsets. If you're looking into what a VR headset costs, like back in the days, right now you have like an Oculus Quest. I don't know what's the actual daily price for a small sized Oculus Quest headset, for Quest 2 with a minimum amount of storage inside, perhaps something like, I don't know, 300 euros. Let's consider 300 euros plus VAT or including VAT, something like this. So it's super affordable. I assume that Apple will come around with a device that will cost more like 1,000 euros, like the iPhones cost, because they want to get a little bit away from this cheap mass market in a way. And they, of course, they want to earn some money with their product, and they get an extra amount of money for the design piece and so on. But that's a different thing. It's not like because it's so costly, it's more like because they can make it that costly because people will pay for it, because people who are into Apple will pay 1,000 euros, even if you could get a cheaper one for 300 euros. And that's exactly what Facebook did. They, I don't think that they earn money with selling an Oculus Quest. They earn money with the software that you install afterwards, with the 30% of royalties they take from selling a 30-euro game in the Oculus Quest in the end. So if they know that there is millions of headsets out there where they didn't earn €1 with, they know that these 2 million headsets will purchase a couple of games and they'll earn a lot of money with that. And so it's again, this kind of structure in there. That's why I'm looking from two angles. I'm pretty much convinced that we are in a way already there, that the headsets are super affordable. I mean, people are spending much more money on other things than 250 to 300 euros for a headset. And the headset might replace your TV screen, might replace even a cinema screen. One of the first applications in the Samsung Gear 6 years ago was a cinema screen made by Netflix, where you could watch all the Netflix stuff in your account in a virtual cinema environment. So they already understood that if you're a single anyway, or you really want to focus on your film, you don't need all your living room environment around you. Perhaps you're someone who doesn't even have money for a nice living room environment. So if you're sitting in a shitty single room apartment with the kitchen and the living room in one, perhaps you're even happy to put on a VR headset, having that's how a cinema looked like, right, environment, and a huge screen in front of you. So I'm super convinced that we will find headsets that are providing a more or less proper image quality for 150 to 200 euros soonish. That was the price range for an Oculus Go in the end. And we'll find devices in the area of 300, 400, 500 euros, and we'll find devices for 1,200 euros. And then, of course, even more costly ones that are more for the industrial usage, like Vario from Finland, for example.
So basically, we're getting there.
We are more or less there already. People are not really taking care. And that's, again, the chicken egg problem, that there wasn't enough content, there was not the awareness, and a lot of people who didn't like VR from the beginning saying, VR, that's another bus. But it is here still. So and it's getting more and more. And if you look at the numbers, like Accenture just bought like 60,000 devices, Oculus Quest 2 for their employees. So if companies invest in this amount of devices to give it to their employees, 60,000 more people have the headsets now and will probably install games in that. So it's step by step.
Yeah.
We don't have to rush too much. And if we expect always that things will be established after 3 years, we might make a failure here. And I think cinema and TV needed longer as well. VR will take the same, and I think we are already at a tipping point where it is established in a way. It just needs a little bit more time that everybody recognizes that you can buy it at the media market for that price. This time is coming.
Yeah. Now, let's switch focus a little bit to the human side. I promise we are not sponsored by Nokia, but I have to push another button over there, because you mentioned the Nokia camera, and I'm gonna use their motto: connecting people. Is XR connecting people, or creating a dependency that will actually break when people get off in the real world?
Well, both, I would say. And perhaps we should consider, it's a medium. So with the medium, you can do a lot of things. So you can connect people, you can separate people. The medium, on the other hand, it's V, is just technology. VR doesn't do anything. We human beings do something with that medium in this or in that way. We can do very good things with that medium, and we can do the most ridiculous, stupid things with that medium. So, of course, if you were coming from a cinema perspective, and I just talked to an A festival director who said, like, well, in VR, you're just consuming the stuff on your own. It's not like a cinema visit where you're sitting with all the other people. And I'm like, well, when I'm in the cinema, I don't want to have the other people. I mean, I'm happy that the other people are with me in the cinema room, but I don't want to feel them. I don't want to hear them eating popcorn all the time, because it's disturbing me and my experience with the cinema. I would be happy if I would have this single experience in the cinema room again. Of course, I appreciate that if I'm going with a group of people, sometimes I can talk to someone next to me like, wow, did you see that, or something like. Of course, it's kind of a group experience, and I appreciate it. So, of course, in VR, you can have a very, very single experience. And sometimes it's even for us, like when we have like we are cinema installations, we have 30 people in the room, they are all having VR headsets, and then we see reactions. And of course, we're standing there like, well, that's interesting, but we'll never find out where it was, because we cannot see the same image as the person. We cannot even ask, because the person is in VR at that moment. So yes, it can be very single and singular. But as I just said, I mean, there are, for example, these kind of platforms, and we are talking about the Metaverse, which should be happening in VR. I mean, it's not defined, and it's not on Zuckerberg to define what's the Metaverse. And we can talk about that in 10 years, about what is the status quo of the Metaverse then. But I assume that what is meant with that, like having a social VR platform where you can meet, where you can collaborate, where you can exchange things, not even informations, but you can sell, I say once now in this call, NFTs. Of course, it can be a very social technology as well, a very social medium as well to connect people. And again, if we consider VR headsets as we know them right now as an intermediate to something that might be an XR headset, something that can be VR but as well AR, then we forget about defining VR as something that it brings people together or separating people. It's just one way to use this glass that we are wearing all day long, and sometimes we shut it off because we need some information very clearly and not disturbed by any other external aspects. And sometimes it's just a layer on top of reality on the world around us that gives us extra informations, like, I don't know, the navigation when we are driving a car, or the short messages while we are, like I could read my short message and answer them while I'm on a call with you and you will not recognize it. Is this social or not social? I don't know.
Yeah.
So there will be a lot of things that, and that's what I wanted to say was that depends on us. It doesn't depend on the medium, and the medium itself does not define that. We can use it for both. So VR is not per se something that separates us or bringing us together. It can be used for both, and it is used for both already.
Mm-hmm. I see. I was thinking about this anime I was watching several years ago, Sword Art Online. I don't know if you are familiar with. I'm not an anime fan, but I uber binged it. Like it was so catchy. Like, come on. It was about a kid that experienced full immersive diving in VR. Now, of course, that's an anime and that's fantasy, but the fantasy was exaggerated. Of course, if he would die over there, he would die in real life and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Taking it to a more realistic level, is there the possibility to have full immersive experiences in the next couple of 5-10 years? Is it a tangible reality?
Honestly, I don't really know. I mean, it's kind of a philosophical question as well. I mean, for me, it's like it's what we make out of it, and I'm more coming from the entertainment angle, and so I would say yes, it is in a way. And I see that we are running more and more into this world that is described by Matrix and so on. But on the other hand, I still have the feeling we are not living in a Matrix, and I don't have a USB plug in my bag. So, and what was the name of this anime? I didn't see it probably.
Sword Art Online. I'm gonna write it down here so you have it after the call.
So I'll watch it after this call, and I'll be able to answer that question in the next podcast. But Sword Art Online. Okay, sounds interesting, definitely. Well, I still believe that we as human beings will be born at a certain day and will pass away on a certain day, and we will not be able to conserve ourselves and live on in a virtual environment or in a virtual reality or something like this. That's what I'm pretty sure about. Perhaps that answer is partially in a way. Yeah.
Okay, then if we are to stick to the current situation, mm-hmm. Could you tell me 5 or let's say 3 pros, 3 cons that nowadays XR is presenting?
3 pros and 3 cons. Where do I start? Pros is definitely for most of the people to open up again for new forms, new mediums, new things to do that they well, I know people who are stuck with TV or consuming a lot of stuff on their smartphones or tablets, and they couldn't really focus on one medium anymore. And if you're in VR, your phone at the moment, at least, I mean, Oculus is working on that as well, or they already implemented that. You'll see your short messages coming in in the VR headset. But generally spoken, if you're in VR, you're in VR, and perhaps you can focus on something for at least that moment. And so that's something I would say is a positive aspect. So sometimes if you consume something, you're focusing on that and not on a little bit of everything. It is, how to say, it's a path that is completely new. So out of my perspective as well, coming from the entertainment industry, again, like cinema and films. Like in Germany, we have public broadcasters, and they are doing what they are doing since decades, and they didn't change too much. It's huge tankers, and they are just moving slowly, but they are moving forward and doing it the way they did it always. And they can't change the system. They don't want to change a running system, and they don't do it at all. So here we have a new medium where nobody really can tell you what's a dogma or how to do it. Of course, there are general rules, and there are, of course, the longer it is here, the more experience people have and know what works and what doesn't. But in generally spoken, that's what I said in the beginning what I wanted to say when I said, like, we are working on formats, like art pieces that are not fitting into specific genres and formats. We can do that, and then we can judge afterwards if that fits into it or not. And it is allowed. People are even funding these kind of projects because they say, okay, that sounds appealing. That sounds like something new for this interactive medium. So I don't have to argue with the commissioner from a public broadcast station if that fits into their broadcasting slot at 8:15, because they always show this kind of a project at, like, it's always a crime series on a Sunday evening. So it has to be a crime series, and the murder has to be revealed at minute 88 because only 2 minutes before it ends. And like this. So there's a very clear structure in these films. You can't break it up, not at all. Here's different. That's something I appreciate a lot, and I appreciate a lot for artists. And that's perhaps the third positive aspect. It was very open at the beginning, and it still is in a way. And there was a lot of collaboration happening there's still a lot of collaboration happening on the producer side, on the side of the people who are creator side, let's take it like that, because everybody struggled with the same things. Nobody wanted to deal with the same things as the friend over there already solved. So people are talking to each other, and it brought together two industries that have not been brought together before: the games industry and the media industry, the television and cinema industry. So because the one thing was interactive and the other thing was linear. And then the guys from the film industry totally ignored, some recognized, but didn't know how to deal with that. That the games industry is already much further, because if you are playing like Grand Theft Auto, for example, there's a huge amount of film clips inside. Half of the gameplay is film clips, and the whole story is told with the films that you have to watch in between, and then you can run a little bit through the open world and forget about that. The whole thing is in a way linear story that you're following. So super intelligent. The film world totally ignored that and didn't know how to add an interactive layer in there without jeopardizing their 19 minutes film thingy, So this is opened up totally in VR. And while first some guys meant to make the dogmas and the rules and said, like, 360 video is not VR. While other people said, well, when I watch it in my VR headset and I'm totally there, then I might consider it as VR for me, because it's a virtual reality I was dropped in, even if it's photorealistic images. So at least we are discussing a little bit again. We are opening up for discussions, and we are opening up for new ways of collaboration and creating content in a modern way that is perhaps more appropriate for what the younger generations are expecting, if they are not growing up just with books and the only interaction is to change the page, but with like 3 years old already having an iPad in their hand and having completely different moves and swipes and 3 fingers, 2 fingers, like these kind of things in their mind already. I think it is an advanced thing here that we or an advancement that we are learning to deal with media and new tools in that way now. A negative point is definitely the aspect of data. In Germany, we are not supposed to buy an Oculus headset anymore. They are not really like sold here publicly in Germany, because with the Quest 2, it was invented that you don't need an Oculus account anymore, but a Facebook account. So you can only log in with a Facebook account, or you cannot create a new Oculus account. You can only create a new Facebook account. And I don't have to go too much into details here, because we know the collection of data sets and how Facebook is approximately dealing with that. But it was pretty crystal clear that they just collect more data about you, and that it's all collected in one account now, and they don't have 3 different accounts. They can't squeeze it together, at least not legally. So now they have it all in one account. And what we know is that you can identify people, for example, pretty easily by very few steps, walk cycles. You can, even if you don't have a picture of them or anything, you can identify them, because that's a very unique thing for people. If you're in VR, you collect much more data of that. And you collect not even much more data about people and about behaviors and movements of hands and fingers and foods and so on, depending on the tracking that we have. But as well, for example, in the Quest, you have this inside-out tracking system. So you have 6 cameras in there that is recording stereoscopically your surrounding all the time. So while you're in VR and you're not seeing your environment, your headset is approximately filming your living room wherever you are right now completely and streaming it to wherever in the world and doing whatever it can do. And artificial intelligence is directly identifying if you have a cat, a dog, if someone passes by that you didn't even recognize, all these kind of things. So the amount of data that is collected by these devices without you knowing it, without you even recognizing, like with an iPhone, you have the feeling you know if the camera is switched on or not. And there is a small marker on top of it that shows you that the camera is on right now. In VR, it is constantly switched on because it's needed for the inside-out tracking. And so this is really something to talk about.
Yeah, but that sounds like a different subject for a whole new podcast.
Exactly. It's an evening filling topic, let's say it like that. So I think that's already 3 cons in one, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah. We're cutting it close to the end. I want to thank you, Zonke, for joining us. I want to thank all our subscribers, our listeners for tuning in. And as I opened this podcast, I'm going to give you the honor of closing it. One sentence of what is XR to you?
Exciting. XR sighting. No, really, it is exciting because it's a new world. We can do so much in there. It's super exciting. Like while I was getting bored by television industry before and so on, I'm super excited each day here in my business, creating new content, thinking about new things, new approaches, throwing it all away, starting new from scratch when we have the feeling that's not exciting. So super exciting. Thanks for having me, by the way, and thanks to the audience for listening to this.
Thank you for joining. Be sure to check back next week for the next HIPTHER Talks and subscribe on Amazon Music, Overcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Mixcloud, and Pandora.